This is Ornana Tamasese. He plays for Kiwi FC in Samoa, and the club have told me they reckon he's the next Virgil van Dijk. But he needs some guidance, someone to advise him on what clubs to move to and to give him objectives every single season. So he's hired me to be his superstar agent to help get his career up and running and help fulfill his Maldini levels of potential. These are his attributes heading into his first season. He's tall, strong in the air, and has very good tackling ability. This gives him a current ability of 48. So he's got a long way to go to hit the 183 to be as good as Van Dijk. For season 1, we're going to keep him at Kiwi FC, whose jersey I am wearing right now. I want to see how he performed against physical players. So this season, I want to see him get 80% of his tackles won, and if he can do that, we can give him 5 attribute points to help boost his current ability. Ornan put his aerial dominance to use, as he scored 5 goals across the season, as well as clearing plenty of crosses away from danger. However, it wasn't enough to win the title, as Kiwi only finished 4th in the table. He's also managed to win 83% of his tackles, so we can give him 5 attribute points to help him reach his potential. So obviously at such a young age, I think we have to put all 5 of these points into his determination. It's currently 2 right now, and that is nowhere near good enough. For him to be an elite prospect, that's got to be double figures. His current ability has risen to 64, and I think we should look at a few clubs that he could maybe move to. Early in Ornan's career, I think the best place for him to move would be Australia. Perth Glory have the lowest rated centre backs in the league, so I reckon he could get some game time there. Sydney FC only have 4 players who can play at centre back, so again he might get some good game time if there's some injuries. But Western Sydney Wanderers have an 18-year-old with lower current ability than Ornan, and he played 5 times off the bench. So they are proven to give youngsters a chance, as well as playing 3 at the back. So for £50,000 and a 25% sell-on clause, Ornan moves from Kiwi FC to Western Sydney Wanderers on the first day of the transfer window. And if he can feature in 20 games this season, we'll give him 5 more bonus points to use at the end of the season. So whilst we wait for next season to simulate, let me tell you about how I got my hands on a Kiwi FC jersey, a team from literally the other side of the world. Sangalo are football shirt manufacturers with one simple mission: showcase and support some of the most exciting and unique football clubs on the planet. So for example, Kiwi FC are one of the biggest clubs in Samoa. The men's team have won 7 league titles, whilst the women's team have won 4 titles on the bout and had a historic OFC Champions League appearance in 2023. Sangalo also designed the kits in partnership with the club, so both home and away kits feature localised Samoan patterns, as well as including the Kiwi bird on the back of the neck. So us shirt collectors get some really cool jerseys to add to our collections, and the clubs in question get an extra revenue stream to help grow the club and support their local communities. Sangalo are supporting loads of great clubs from across the world, so visit their website via the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen to find your new favourite jersey right now. Western Sydney Wanderers finished 2nd in the regular season table, qualifying for the playoffs, where they beat Sydney FC and then Melbourne Victory to be crowned champions, earning Ornan his first piece of silverware. However, he's only featured in 16 games domestically for Western Sydney Wanderers, although it looks like he has played 10 times for a reserve team, so I think I'm going to give him that. I'm going to say he's played in 20 games in all competitions. He's also played 12 times internationally, so he has played a lot of football this season. His determination has improved by 2 to 9, so I think we're going to put all 5 points into that once again, taking that total up to 14. That should help him develop into a better player further down the line because he's more determined to train harder and play harder. That takes his current ability up to 104. A whopping 40 points in a single season. I reckon we're going to give him another season in Australia to kind of see how he keeps developing there before thinking about moving him on. My target for him this season is to retain the league title. Okay, we have an interesting update here halfway through season 3. We're in the January transfer window, and all of these European clubs are super interested in signing Ornan because of his significant potential and the fact he could break into their first teams sooner than expected. I, on the other hand, do not think he's going to break into these first teams anytime soon. His current ability has risen by 11 in the last 6 months, but this is only really League 1 level of ability, so we have a choice to make. Using the in-game editor, I can see that Western Sydney Wanderers will accept a bid of 1.5 million for Ornan. Obviously, these European clubs can afford that. But what about other clubs elsewhere in the world? In my head, I always had a different plan for him, and I think I have found the perfect spot. Urawa Red Diamonds have just finished third in the Japanese J-League, qualifying for the AFC Champions League, which they won back in 2023. They have excellent training facilities to develop him, £60 million to spend, and crucially, he'd be the second best out-and-out centre-back at the club based on current ability. It might not be the most conventional route, but I am talking myself into the Ange Postecoglou pathway. We're moving on to Japan. At 1.5 million, it's a bargain. He's going to play first team football at a continental level, and I think that's a lot better than being loaned out to Crawley Town for a season. If he can win 75% of his tackles throughout the season, we can give him 5 attribute points to upgrade. So we've now travelled 11 months into the future from when Ornan signed for the Red Diamonds to the end of the Japanese season. Ornan played well, sometimes starting off attacks, but other times he did give the ball away. By the end of the season, he has helped Red Diamonds to a second consecutive third place finish, and he has really improved as a footballer. We've seen some nice upgrades here, especially leadership, and I reckon that's gone up too since the last time we saw him. He's also just managed a 75% tackles won rate, so we can upgrade him by 5 attribute points. Eventually, we're going to move him to Europe, so I think he needs to be faster to succeed there. So we're going to up his pace by 2 and acceleration by 3. So this means his current ability is now 132. That makes him the second best player in the J-League, which I was not expecting. He is progressing way quicker than I had anticipated. However, I don't think we move him to Europe just yet for one key reason. The AFC Champions League follows a winter calendar, so during the first half of his second season in Japan, he'll be in the knockout rounds. So I think we keep him here until we get to summer when the European transfer window opens and move him on then. Sadly though, Red Diamonds end up losing to Shanghai Port in the Champions League quarter-finals, where perhaps Ornan was at fault. 2/3 of the way through the season, the club are only 10th in the table and unlikely to qualify next time around. So it really does seem like the ideal time to move him on. Now at 141 current ability, with an asking price of 4.3 million, every club in Europe is going to want him. But the issue is, he is still not good enough in my opinion to be actually starting at those clubs. So although the money there would be amazing, we need to try and take the sensible route. Kind of like we did with moving him to Japan. So I think Ajax is the move. They do have 4 natural centre-backs, but Ornan would be the second best. It's a step up in quality, a team that can compete for league titles and play continental football, but despite having £136 million in the bank, they have minus 16 million of transfer budget, so they can't afford him. Instead then, we're going to send him to Sporting Club de Portugal. They have dropped off a little bit as they finished 4th last season, but Ornan would be the best centre-back at the club, and there's a great chance that he can help get them back to the Champions League. So off he goes to Lisbon for 4.3 million, with a target of returning the club to the Champions League. However, it's just another 4th place finish for Sporting in the league, and an early exit in the Conference League in the round of 16. Despite that though, Ornan has been named the Oceania Player of the Season because he's had a stellar campaign. He's played in 53 matches, scored 6 goals, won 80% of his headers, completed 92% of his passes, and won 70% of his tackles. And his attributes have shot up. So his current ability is now 159, making him an elite centre-back. I really don't think he's going to improve much more here at Sporting. The level just isn't high enough. So after just 1 season in Portugal, we need to move him on. He would start for PSG and be guaranteed titles there, but I don't think, looking at the current ability of the team, they'll be challenging for Champions League titles. I've looked through top Premier League teams, and he wouldn't yet be a clear number 1 at any of the top 7 sides, although being a number 2 is okay I suppose. But the reason I'm not sending him there is because I think I have found a dream spot. Inter Milan play 3 at the back, and as Pavard approaches 34 years old, he needs replacing. They also have a very young team with really high potential. So moving here could mean he becomes part of a dynasty. So for an insanely cut price fee, we're moving Ornan to Inter Milan for just 31 million. I want to see him go up for 250 headers this season. If he can do that, we can think about giving him 5 extra bonus points. Ornana had a strong season with Inter. He scored 3 goals in all competitions and helped the club improve on their 5th place finish last season. It's not quite a title though, but moving up to 3rd place is a step in the right direction for this young team. But a loss to Manchester United in the Europa League round of 16 suggests we aren't quite as good as Tottenham Hotspur right now. Ornana has smashed his target of 250 headers by going up for nearly 400 across the season, so we can give him 5 extra attribute points. I think this time around what we need to be doing is looking to improve his ball playing ability, so I'm going to put 2 points into technique and passing, and then my last point into first touch. This takes his current ability up to 171, and at just 22 years old, he is obviously going to reach his potential ability unless something catastrophic happens. So we need to have the next target pretty high. Next season I want him to have a 95% pass completion rate for those extra attribute points. Ornana only scored once in Season 6, but it was his defensive efforts that have helped into this season. They finished 2nd in the table, level on points with AC Milan, and this has led to a 2-legged playoff for the title between the two teams. I'm not quite sure why though, because looking at the league rules, the league should be sorted by results between teams, then goal difference, and then goals scored. AC Milan beat Inter and then drew with them this season, so that should mean they claim the title. But for whatever reason, the games put them in a playoff. So in the playoff, Inter won the first leg 1-0 when they were classed as the away side. Then in the second leg, Inter took the lead early doors to make it 2-0 on aggregate. AC were able to pull one back early in the second half, but then our boy Ornana rose highest and scored a goal to win Inter Milan the Serie A title. Just before that game, Ornana did subscribe to the channel, so clearly good things happen to people who press that subscribe button. However, he only completed 91% of his passes this season, so we aren't going to be upgrading him. Not that we need to though, because he's had another step forward in his current ability. It is now at 183, meaning he's reached his full potential, so the next time we set him a target will be when he starts to decline. Also, a quick look at the Samoan national team that he's also playing for. Their world ranking hasn't really changed since the start of the video, as they're 171st in the world, but they are progressing. After winning their World Cup qualifying group, they then lost 9-0 on aggregate to New Zealand, who qualify for the World Cup. This then led to a playoff against El Salvador for a spot instead, but the Central American side won. It's another good year for Ornana and Inter Milan. This time they don't need a playoff with AC Milan, as this season they hit 100 points to run away with the league title. They only just qualified for the knockout rounds on goal difference, but when they got there, they were battered 4-2 on aggregate by Benfica. So clearly Inter are not performing well in Europe, and we need him to be winning a Champions League. So maybe we need to move on from Inter Milan already. Premier League champions Newcastle United are interested in signing Ornana, but they only have 161 million to spend, and Inter won't take anything less than 211. So for now, he is staying put. With Ornana at the heart of defence and scoring from corners, it's a 3rd league title in a row for Inter Milan in Season 8. But it's another early exit from the Champions League, this time in the round of 16 against Barcelona. Ornana is now the best player on the team in terms of current ability, and looking through it, there should be enough high quality players to win the tournament. So either the tactics just aren't working, or the other players just aren't turning up in big moments. I think we really have to seriously consider moving him on from Inter. Inter will let him go for 203 million, and there is literally only one club in the world with that budget to sign him. Real Madrid can spend £559 million on transfers this summer, and they've won 4 of the last 6 Champions Leagues. So for me, it's a no-brainer. We're going to move him to Real Madrid, where hopefully he's going to win plenty of Champions Leagues. It's just going to cost them an awful lot of money to bring him in. But doesn't Ornana look good in the white and gold of Real Madrid? Plus, he really contributed. Real Madrid went on to win the La Liga title with 101 points. The highest points total in league history. They also beat Real Betis to win the Copa del Rey, which incredibly is Ornana's first cup that he's won. However, it is a disaster in the Champions League. Jude Bellingham left Real Madrid to join Man City for 252 million and scored the only goal of the first leg. Real did equalise in the second leg, but Erling Haaland's late goal where he beat Ornana in the penalty area means Man City win 2-1 on aggregate. So it was almost a perfect first season in Madrid. I think we are on the right tracks here. Another season of success has resulted in 5 goals for Ornana and 2 trophies. Real Madrid won their 7th La Liga in a row and claimed the Club World Cup title over the summer. But they didn't win the Copa del Rey, and they got battered 4-1 on aggregate in the Champions League semi-final by Ornana's former club Inter Milan. Did we move him on too quickly from Inter? Should we have just given it a bit of time? Well, luckily for us, Inter did lose the final to Man City, but they have changed their tactics and maybe that's why they're now reaching the final. I still have faith in Madrid though. 2 semi-finals in 2 seasons is no easy achievement to make, so I think at some point soon they'll get to the final and win it. Ornana didn't score a single goal in season 11. Instead, he kept plenty of clean sheets as Real Madrid break another La Liga points tally this season. But they lost in the Cup quarter-final and in the Champions League round of 16, 4-1 on aggregate to Tottenham Hotspur. So maybe they are quite far away from winning in Europe. A bit of a blip here, but I'm sure they can turn it around. In season 12, Ornana only scored 1 La Liga goal, which I do find a bit strange. He's 6'3", has 18 jumping reach and 16 heading. He should be scoring more goals from set pieces in my opinion. But who am I to question it? Because it's now 4 La Liga titles in a row for him, and I think we've done a great job of moving him to clubs who can win trophies. At least domestic trophies. This season, Real Madrid lose in the quarterfinals of the Champions League 5-4 on aggregate. Although Ornana didn't play in the first leg. If he had, I reckon it's a different result. Arsenal go on to win the tournament, and looking at their team based on current ability, it might just be better than Real Madrid's, which is food for thought. But Real won't let Ornana go for less than 211 million, a price tag that Arsenal can't afford right now. Ornana proved his worth this season by scoring 9 goals across the season in all competitions, a career high. Obviously, Real won their 10th La Liga in a row, with Ornana claiming his 5th. They also beat Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final on penalties, with Ornana scoring his before Barcelona went on to have their effort saved. But they somehow finished 28 in the Champions League phase and don't even make the knockouts. In truth, their draw was tough, but there is no excuse for Real not getting more points. It feels like this Champions League is just not going to work out at Real Madrid, so again, I'm feeling pressured to move him on. The issue is money. Real will let a 30-year-old Ornana go for 173 million, and clubs can afford that. What they can't afford is his £450,000 per week wage. Champions League finalists Spurs are overpaying wages by £50,000 a week, whereas the winners, RB Leipzig, are £161,000 over budget. So we have to keep Ornana at Real Madrid for another season, and hope that next year the asking price keeps coming down and there's going to be a few more clubs that might be able to afford him. Congratulations to Ornana for winning his 6th La Liga title. At this point, it's not even impressive. But a Champions League round of 16 exit to Inter Milan is the last straw. We have to move him on. With 1 year left in his contract, Real will let him go for 127 million, which is mental for a 32-year-old. But he is still an elite player. His current ability hasn't yet dropped, so he's still at the peak of his powers. Looking at the past winners of the Champions League, most seasons a Premier League team has been in the final, so a move to England is needed. Only 2 teams have the transfer budget and wage budget available to bring Ornana into the club. One of them is Manchester United and the other is Arsenal. So if Ornana signs for Arsenal, he would immediately massively improve this team. So off he goes to Arsenal for a record transfer fee. Interestingly, the news article here states he's only played 47 times for Samoa. That's because Samoa don't actually play an awful lot of football. Sadly, the Ornana effect has been minimal on the national team, who are still only ranked 167th in the world. In the OFC Nations League, they always win their first round group stage against weak opposition, but then they finish bottom of their second round group. Annoyingly, in this second round group, it's the top 3 teams that go to the World Cup qualifying, which is how Samoa eventually ended up playing El Salvador for a spot in the World Cup 8 seasons ago. Sadly, they just haven't been able to repeat it since. Ornana scored 1 goal all season. This header against Barcelona in the Champions League round of 16. They lost on the night, but won 6-4 on aggregate. but it's his defending that's making the biggest difference. Arsenal win the Premier League title on goal difference ahead of Man City, and that's because Arsenal conceded less goals. He's also helped them reach the Champions League final, something that he couldn't do in 6 seasons at Madrid, but does it for the first time in North London. The final is also a North London derby, as Arsenal take on Spurs in Munich and dominate the match, winning 3-0 on the night, and finally, Ornan claims the Champions League he's been so desperate for. However, just before his 33rd birthday, Ornan's physicals are starting to decline as he loses some pace and jumping reach. His current ability has dropped to 179, so we need to set some challenges to try and slow this decline down. The past season, he's only won 67% of his tackles. If he can get it up to 75%, we can give him 5 attribute points. The next season isn't quite so good for Ornan and Arsenal. They lose 5-3 on aggregate to Sampdoria in the Champions League round of 16, and they drop down the table to 5th position. So this is the first season since Ornan's first season at Inter Milan where he hasn't won a trophy. The good news is he won 79% of his tackles, so we can improve him by 5 attribute points. With his physicals being the first thing and the quickest to drop off, we need to put 3 points into his acceleration and 2 points into his pace. This takes his current ability back up to 178, so he's still one of the best players in the database. He went up for 294 headers this last season, so if he can reach 300 next time, I'll upgrade him again. Season 17 was special though. Ornan scores a couple of goals as Arsenal fight their way back up to 2nd in the Premier League table, just missing out on the title behind Man City. And then they had a whirlwind run through the Champions League, going behind against Juventus and Real Sociedad, only to come back and make the final. However, it's Newcastle United who they face in the final, and they take the lead after a defensive mistake. The Gunners were able to equalise, but never take the lead. So we're going to penalties. Arsenal score first, and Newcastle have their effort saved. Then it's a back and forth, with both teams scoring every single penalty right up until the last round. Which means if Arsenal can score their 5th, they win. And look who is stepping up to take it. And he scores the goal to win his 2nd Champions League trophy. What a hero. However, all of those points we put into his attributes last season have basically come right back off again as he approaches his 35th birthday. He also just missed out on going up for 300 headers, so we can't improve him again this season, meaning his current ability is now 172, which still makes him a top 60 player in the database. Despite that, Arsenal aren't going to renew his contract, and he's wanted by Man City and Al Nassr. But I have a better idea. Since Ornan left Kiwi FC, they've only been able to win 1 title, and that needs to change. So on a free transfer, we're sending him back to Kiwi FC where it all started to try and win them a league title. And obviously, he guides them to a league title at the first time of asking, qualifying for next season's OFC Champions League. He's still dropping in his attributes, but that's not putting off a whole host of Saudi Arabian clubs, Leeds United and Wolverhampton Wanderers, from wanting to sign him. But he's not going to play for any of those clubs next season. After coming home to win the title, he has decided to retire. He's had an incredible career, playing over 700 games in all competitions for 7 clubs across 3 different continents and winning multiple trophies. The Australian A-League, 3 Serie A's, 6 La Ligas, 3 Copa del Reys, 1 Club World Cup and a Premier League, 2 Champions Leagues, and most importantly, 1 Samoan National League title. Not bad going at all. Big thanks to Kiwi and Ornan for being such great sports, and big thanks to Sangale for sending me over their jersey. Remember, you can find this jersey and a whole host of others over on their website, linked down in the description below. So we spent a lot of time at Real Madrid in this video, and they just kept winning the league title. Well, in this video on screen, I became the Real Madrid manager, and I have to keep winning matches, otherwise I get sacked. So I have to try and keep going for as long as possible to make sure I'm not the shortest serving manager in Real Madrid history. Click the thumbnail on screen right now to go and see how I got on. It's a lot tougher than you might imagine it to be.